Hello and welcome. My name is Trisha Mandes, and thanks for joining me at Take Control Tuesdays, where you learn to take control of your diet, your weight, and your health. And today we are talking about winter squash. It's fall, and there are so many different types of winter squash available at the grocery store, and they are so delicious, and there's so many different things we can do with them. But people traditionally like to stick to their sweet potatoes or their butternut squash and don't really explore when there's different varieties and tastes to have fun with. So right now I'm going to show you 5 different squash that I really enjoy and what you can do with them. So the first people are probably a little more familiar with. This is an acorn squash. And acorn squash are mildly sweet, and a great thing you can do with acorn squash is you can cut it in half and scoop out the seeds and bake it, and then you can stuff it with something else, like farro or a wild rice mix that might have some nuts or some cranberries in there, going with the Thanksgiving flair. Or you could slice it in rings and bake the rings. And the same thing you could do with this squash that kind of looks like an acorn in its shape. This is called a sweet dumpling, and it's also mild in flavor. And this would be excellent to serve as a dish individually. So you would just cut the top off and scoop out the seeds and bake it with something inside of it, or put that something inside of it when it's done baking. So this would be really beautiful on a plate for a nice dinner party. And next we have the golden nugget. This is a golden nugget squash. This one's going to be a little sweeter in taste, but this one has a really thick skin. So when you go to cook the golden nugget, you have to stick a knife in it or a fork all around it and bake it first. And then you can just bake it the whole way, or you can cut it up into little chunks after you've baked it a little bit. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to cut into it. And here we have the kaboka squash. Kaboka is a Japanese word for squash. And this one is even sweeter. It's rich and it's sweet, and it's like a cross between a sweet potato and a pumpkin. And once you bake it, it gets a little bit flaky almost. And that's what it looks like all around. And they get a lot big. They get larger than this too, so you can see it bigger than this in the grocery store. And this is my all-time favorite. This is one of my favorite squash in the whole world. This is a buttercup squash. It's in the turban squash family because of the shape, and it's thicker on the outside, but this squash is incredibly sweet. And you can get them smaller than this too, but I love it so much that I will eat as much that I can. So it's really, really sweet, and it's creamy, and it's rich. It's really easy to make sauces out of the buttercup squash. It just naturally has that texture. So go out and try and experiment with one of these squashes. Now I've included 3 different recipes in the article for this episode of Take Control Tuesdays, and one of those recipes is an acorn squash and apple soup, which takes 15 minutes. And these are all Trish the Dish approved recipes. They're all made with whole plant foods. There's no added oils or animal products, keeping it as clean and as healthy as possible, and delicious. That's also really important. So that's one recipe. And then there's also a stuffed sweet dumpling recipe, stuffed with lemon herbed rice that you can find. And then there is a kaboka bean dip from one of my favorite recipe websites. That's Kathy Fisher. She makes whole plant-based foods with no added salt, oil, or sugar, and they are phenomenal. So I encourage you to try those recipes. Now, what can you do with all of these squashes? Like, you have it at home, what are you going to do? My favorite thing to do is bake and roast them, because they get really sweet and the sugars condense and they caramelize a little bit, so they're really delicious, especially the buttercup. So all you have to do for most of these, with the exception of the golden nugget, is you cut them. So they can be a little trick to cut. You just have to really get on top of the squash with your knife and just like really push down on it. and you'll slide right through it. Or you can bake it a little bit first and then cut it. That will make it easier. But I like to cut them into little cubes and then bake them. The golden rule of thumb for squash: oven on 400 degrees. Put them in a baking pan. I just put like 2 tablespoons of water in the dish. You can put a little bit more, but the more water you put in it, it starts to steam rather than roast, so you'll lose some of that sweetness. So I just put 2 tablespoons of water in, and it gets really sweet. And they don't really stick. You might have a little bit left on the pan, but it's super easy to clean. It's never been a problem. And then you save yourself hundreds of calories without the oil. But bake them at 400 for 20 to 30 minutes. Covered, uncovered, just check on them. And then poke them with a fork. And once they're soft, they're good to go. So you can also blend these into a soup or just add the chunks in soup. They're really easy to mash after you bake them. And the beautiful thing about these is these foods speak on their own. The flavors are so rich that you don't have to add so much to them in order to make them taste good. So you could just bake a buttercup squash, mash them up, put a little cinnamon on there or some raisins, and you have an excellent mashed squash dish. You could also bake them with apples, spices like cinnamon and allspice. Nutmeg would be really yummy. Cranberries, raisins, dried fruits. You could put a little bit of walnuts on top or hazelnuts on top would be really yummy as well. But my favorite way to eat them is just plain with a little bit of sea salt. That's it. They're really yummy. So not only are they yummy, but they're incredibly nutritious. All of these will have an orange pigment on the insides, and these squashes and all orange, red, yellow fruits and vegetables are really high in carotenoids like beta carotene. And these have really fantastic disease protecting and disease fighting properties. They're very high in vitamin A, vitamin C, really high in fiber, and so many other phytonutrients and vitamins and minerals. They have protein. They're very low in fat, very low in calories, but they're really high in satiety. So they make us feel really full very easily, which is great because they're very low in calories. So you're going to feel like you ate so much food, and you might eat a lot, but you're going to be eating a very low amount of calories, and you're going to be filled for hours and hours after you eat them. So this is why whole plant foods that are high in starch, like these squash, are excellent for you and help you lose weight, is because they make you feel so full for so long that you don't have to eat for hours and hours afterwards, and they're very low in calories. But they still have an abundance of vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients. They all have protein. They're all naturally low in fat. So these are your best friends, you guys. If you're trying to lose weight and stay off weight and lower your cholesterol, foods like these without added fat on them are your best friends. I love them very much. And the other great thing is that these are $1.29 a pound at my local grocery store, right? So much cheaper than animal products that we think are really good for us too. So this is a little tidbit about winter squash. I hope you go out and buy some and try something new. And now it's time to act now, and I want you to go out and buy one. And I want you to comment below, take a pick, which one are you going to go out and buy? What are you going to make? Are you going to try one of these recipes? Report back to me and let me know how it goes. So get the facts, take control of your weight and your health. You're going to do great. Thanks for watching this edition of Take Control Tuesdays, and I'll see you next time.